The 1980s brought us some of animation's most daring, bizarre, and unforgettable films. But not every masterpiece was welcome on television screens. Some were too violent, too strange, or simply too ahead of their time, vanishing from broadcast after a few showings. Today, we uncover animated gems the networks decided you should never see again. 1. Watership Down, 1978, TV in the 80s. It looked like a charming rabbit adventure until the blood hit the screen. Adapted from Richard Adams' novel, Watership Down follows a band of rabbits fleeing their doomed warren, only to face brutal predators, starvation, and battles for survival. The film's animation, deceptively soft and watercolor-like, lured in unsuspecting families who thought they were in for a light-hearted animal tale. When TV networks began airing it in the 1980s, complaints poured in. Parents were horrified by the explicit scenes of animal violence, rabbits clawed, bitten, and even strangled in visceral detail. The infamous General Woundwort fight became a particular lightning rod for controversy. Children's programming blocks, already under scrutiny from watchdog groups, suddenly had a PR nightmare on their hands. While the movie was critically praised for its faithfulness to the novel and its haunting score by Art Garfunkel, networks concluded it was simply too intense for casual afternoon viewing. Many pulled it from rotation after just a handful of showings, replacing it with safer fare. Ironically, the controversy only deepened the film's cult status. Today, it's remembered as a landmark in adult animation, proving that animated films could tackle mortality, leadership, and survival without sugarcoating the truth. For those who saw it as children, Watership Down remains an unforgettable and unsettling memory. 2. The Plague Dogs, 1982. If Watership Down was intense, its spiritual sibling, The Plague Dogs, was downright devastating. Once again adapted from Richard Adams' work and directed by Martin Rosen, the film follows two dogs escaping from a government research lab where they were subjected to harrowing experiments. The tone is relentlessly bleak, with little reprieve from the emotional weight of the story. When aired on television in the mid-80s, the film's uncompromising depiction of animal cruelty sparked immediate outrage. Sequences showing the aftermath of lab testing, with scars, shaved fur, and psychological trauma, were considered too graphic, even in edited form. The fact that it was animated only intensified the shock for viewers expecting something gentler. In the UK, certain broadcasts cut nearly 20 minutes of material, but even the toned-down versions were deemed too disturbing for regular programming. The US response was similar. Networks quietly shelved the title after minimal exposure, citing viewer complaints and unsuitability for broad audiences. Critics, however, championed the Aidios film as a powerful anti-animal testing statement. Its melancholy tone, haunting score, and morally complex ending cemented its status as a cult classic. But for broadcasters, The Plague Dogs was a liability, too realistic, too sad, and far too bold for comfort. 3. Fire and Ice, 1983. Imagine Conan the Barbarian meets heavy metal, but in hand-drawn fantasy form. Fire and Ice, a collaboration between animation legend Ralph Bakshi and artist Frank Frazetta, delivered exactly that. It's a world of barbarian warriors, deadly sorcery, and epic battles rendered in rotoscoped realism. The style was breathtaking, but also far grittier than anything Saturday morning audiences were prepared for. When certain TV stations tried airing edited versions in the late 80s, the reaction was swift. The violence, even when trimmed, retained a brutal edge. Sword fights with lethal consequences, monstrous creatures meeting grisly ends, and an overall atmosphere steeped in danger. The film's sensual character designs also drew criticism from parents' advocacy groups, who argued it was unsuitable for young viewers. Despite the pushback, Fire and Ice developed a devoted fan base among fantasy enthusiasts. Its hand-painted backdrops and detailed animation are still celebrated today as a high point in adult-oriented fantasy cinema. But on television, it was doomed. Within a short time, networks dropped it entirely, leaving it to live on through VHS rentals and late-night cult screenings. 4. Rock and Rule, 1983. A post-apocalyptic rock opera with mutant animals as its stars? That's Rock and Rule, one of the strangest animated features ever released in North America. Produced by Canada's Nelvana Studios, the film blended hand-drawn animation with rotoscoping, psychedelic backdrops, and a soundtrack featuring Debbie Harry, Lou Reed, and Iggy Pop. It told the story of an aging rock star who plans to summon a demon using the perfect voice, belonging to an unsuspecting young singer. When it landed on U.S. television in the late 80s, the original theatrical cut had already been heavily re-edited for American audiences. Dialogue was altered, scenes were toned down, and the darker undertones were softened. Still, even with the changes, the film's imagery, from trippy demon sequences to suggestive nightclub performances, caught parents off guard. The concept of musical mind control and occult symbolism was enough for advocacy groups to brand it unsuitable for family viewing. Broadcasters quickly pulled it after initial airings, citing low ratings and complaints from viewers who had expected something more like Jem and the Holograms. Ironically, its banishment only grew its legend. Fans began trading bootleg tapes of the uncut version, turning Rock and Rule into a cult classic. Today, it's celebrated for its ambition and for daring to mix rock music with apocalyptic fantasy long before MTV embraced animated experimentation. 5. Twice Upon a Time, 1983. Produced by George Lucas's Lucasfilm and featuring a unique Lumage cutout animation style, Twice Upon a Time is unlike anything else from the 1980s. It's a surreal comedy fantasy set in a realm between dreams and nightmares, where whimsical heroes try to stop an evil plot to flood the world with bad dreams. Visually, it's dazzling, colorful, strange, and unpredictable. But its trouble began when two different edits were created, a family-friendly cut and a more chaotic, edgier version with sharper humor and occasional profanity. Somehow, the edgier cut made it to TV broadcasts in certain markets, sparking angry letters from parents who thought they were getting a gentle bedtime adventure for their children. Networks scrambled to replace it with the tamer version, but the damage was done. Even without the profanity, its surreal sequences, like nightmarish creatures swallowing entire dreamscapes, unsettled younger viewers. Some TV stations quietly pulled it from rotation altogether, finding it too odd to market and too risky to schedule alongside mainstream animated features. Over time, Twice Upon a Time became a rarity, resurfacing only through cult screenings and fan-restored versions. Today, it's beloved by animation enthusiasts who see it as an experiment that television was never equipped to handle. 6. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, 1984, U.S. as Warriors of the Wind. In Japan, Nausicaa is hailed as one of Hayao Miyazaki's greatest achievements, an epic eco-fantasy about a princess trying to save her dying world from human greed and environmental collapse. Its lush world-building, powerful themes, and emotional storytelling cemented Miyazaki's reputation as a master. But when it came to U.S. television in the mid-'80s, disaster struck. The American distributors butchered the film into an 80-minute version titled Warriors of the Wind. Crucial scenes were removed, character motivations were altered, and entire subplots were cut to make it more exciting for kids. The result was a confusing, disjointed story that baffled audiences. Worse, promotional posters replaced the film's strong female protagonist with generic male heroes and monsters, completely misrepresenting the tone. While some TV stations aired the shortened version, it was met with poor reception from critics and lukewarm viewer response. Fans of the original, especially those familiar with Miyazaki's work, were outraged. The film was eventually pulled from U.S. broadcast schedules, its legacy in America tarnished, until Studio Ghibli later re-released the uncut version in the 2000s. Miyazaki was so angered by the treatment that Studio Ghibli adopted a strict no-cuts policy, for all future international releases. In hindsight, Nausicaa's TV troubles became a turning point for preserving artistic integrity in anime imports. But in the 80s, it was just another casualty of television's need to sanitize and simplify. 7. Star Chaser, The Legend of Orin, 1985. Before computer animation took over, Star Chaser. The Legend of Orin was a bold experiment, one of the earliest animated features to use 3D computer-generated imagery alongside traditional cell animation. Marketed as a Star Wars for animation, it told the story of Orin, a young miner who discovers a mysterious sword and learns of a vast galaxy ruled by tyranny. It had everything: laser battles, alien races, and a hero's journey steeped in rebellion. But it also had something television executives didn't like: a darker tone than most sci-fi aimed at kids. The violence was intense for the time, with characters being vaporized, tortured, and betrayed. Some sequences, like the depiction of enslavement in the mines, were far too grim for family-friendly afternoon slots. When TV stations aired it in edited form during the late 80s, the cuts were jarring, leaving the plot disjointed. Parents complained about both the frightening tone and the confusing storytelling. Ratings faltered, and the film was quietly shelved from most TV schedules. Despite its short broadcast life, Star Chaser has since gained cult status. Animation fans admire its ambition and early CGI use, while sci-fi purists see it as a hidden gem from an era when animated space operas dared to aim high, even if TV couldn't handle them. 8. Transformers, the Movie, 1986. Few animated films shocked 1980s children quite like Transformers, the movie. Riding high on the popularity of the TV series, Hasbro and Toei Animation released this feature-length adventure with the goal of introducing new characters and clearing out the old ones permanently. The decision to kill off major heroes, including the beloved Optimus Prime, was a storytelling gamble that devastated young fans. The deaths were shown without softening the blow: explosions, fading voices, and final goodbyes. When the film made its way to TV broadcasts, even edited versions couldn't erase the emotional gut punch. Networks quickly learned they had a PR crisis. Parents flooded stations with complaints about traumatized children, and some TV markets refused to air it at all. Others only played it in late-night slots, away from its target demographic. Ironically, the outrage didn't sink the Transformers brand. It strengthened it. The fan response was so strong that Hasbro eventually brought Optimus Prime back to life in the TV series. But Transformers, the movie, remained a cautionary tale for TV programmers. Even in animation, crossing the line between high-stakes drama and outright heartbreak could lose you your broadcast audience. 9. When the Wind Blows, 1986. Most animated films that found TV trouble did so because of action, fantasy violence, or surreal imagery. When the Wind Blows was different. Based on Raymond Briggs's graphic novel, it's a deeply human story about an elderly British couple preparing for and living through a nuclear attack. The animation is gentle, even quaint, with a hand-drawn style that feels comforting at first. But as the narrative unfolds, that softness becomes a devastating contrast to the grim reality. The couple follows outdated government safety leaflets, oblivious to the true scale of the disaster, and slowly succumbs to radiation sickness. When it aired on TV in the late 80s, it shocked audiences. The realism of their decline, paired with David Bowie's haunting theme song, was too much for many viewers. Some complained it was emotionally manipulative. Others said it was inappropriate for television at all. Several broadcasters banned it outright, while others restricted it to one-time special presentation airings with heavy content warnings. In the end, When the Wind Blows became a powerful anti-war statement, but one that television, with its desire for escapism, wasn't ready to embrace. 10th American Pop, 1981. Ralph Bakshi's American Pop was an ambitious attempt to tell the story of 20th century American music through 4 generations of one immigrant family. Using rotoscoping, a technique where live-action footage is traced over for a more realistic look, the film moved fluidly between decades, from vaudeville stages to smoky jazz clubs, from war-torn Europe to the psychedelic haze of the 1960s. But while the story was about music, it didn't shy away from the darker realities that shaped it. The characters grappled with war trauma, substance abuse, and the cutthroat nature of the entertainment industry. These themes were presented with unflinching realism, amplified by Bakshi's refusal to sanitize the grittier aspects of life. When American Pop was broadcast on television in the 1980s, censors trimmed as much as they could, toning down violent outbursts, muting certain lines, and cutting some of the more intense depictions of nightlife. Yet, even heavily edited, the film's melancholy and mature tone made it a poor fit for family programming. Viewers expecting a cheerful animated musical found themselves watching a raw, bittersweet epic about ambition, loss, and the price of success. Broadcasters received enough complaints to quietly retire it from rotation after limited airings. Its disappearance from TV only boosted its cult status as musicians, animation fans, and Bakshi loyalists praised its authenticity and refusal to play it safe. Today, it's recognized as one of the few animated films to truly treat music history as an adult subject. But television never found a comfortable slot for it. 11. Heavy Metal, 1981. Few animated films have a reputation as notorious as heavy metal. Adapted from the adult fantasy and science fiction magazine of the same name, the anthology film stitched together multiple stories, each drenched in surreal imagery, stylized violence, and pulp-inspired adventures. From apocalyptic wastelands to intergalactic battles, its rotoscoped action and airbrushed visuals gave it a distinctive, otherworldly look. When cable TV networks like HBO aired it in the 1980s, Heavy Metal found a late-night audience of teenagers and sci-fi fans. But when attempts were made to bring it to broader television syndication, problems erupted. The film's content, intense battle sequences, darker moral themes, and a general atmosphere of adult comic book come to life, was difficult to tone down without gutting entire segments. Some edited versions made it to air, but the pacing was crippled, and the transitions between stories became incoherent. The film quickly vanished from most broadcast schedules, living on instead through VHS rentals and midnight theater showings. Its removal from TV only strengthened its legend as a rebellious counterculture icon in animation. Heavy Metal became a rite of passage for fans of edgy science fiction, the kind of movie you had to see because television wouldn't dare show it anymore. 12. Gandahar, 1988, U.S. as Light Years. Originally a French animated feature by René Laloux, Gandahar was a slow, dreamlike science fantasy about a peaceful utopia threatened by an unstoppable mechanical enemy. With its painterly visuals, philosophical undertones, and a storyline that blurred the line between reality and allegory, it was as much art film as sci-fi adventure. In 1988, American audiences saw it under the title Light Years, with a heavily reworked English dub supervised by Isaac Asimov. But when it came to U.S. television, the challenges were immediate. The pacing, deliberate and meditative, clashed with the faster tempo of American programming. Surreal sequences involving shape-shifting creatures, eerie landscapes, and the philosophical musings of its characters confused younger viewers and bored impatient adults. Censors trimmed or altered scenes deemed too unsettling, especially those featuring grotesque transformations or the film's unnerving mechanical antagonists. Unfortunately, these cuts disrupted the already delicate narrative flow, making it nearly incomprehensible. Ratings were low, and the film was pulled from TV rotations after minimal exposure. Today, Gandahar enjoys a small but passionate following among animation aficionados who appreciate its quiet beauty and political subtext. But in the 1980s, TV audiences and executives alike didn't know what to make of it, and it was quickly shelved. 13th Animalympics, 1980. Originally created as a light-hearted parody of Olympic sports coverage, Animalympics featured anthropomorphic animals competing in games around the globe. Its witty commentary, satirical edge, and pop culture references made it a unique offering at the dawn of the 1980s animation boom. The film initially aired without issue, even enjoying some popularity during Olympic years. But by the mid-1980s, changing broadcast standards and a growing sensitivity to certain types of humor began working against it. Some of the jokes, particularly those riffing on political tensions and celebrity stereotypes, were deemed outdated or inappropriate for younger viewers. There were also complaints about the film's occasional innuendo and tongue-in-cheek romantic subplots, which some parents felt strayed too far from wholesome family entertainment. As networks looked to clean up their daytime programming, Animalympics quietly vanished from schedules, replaced by more straightforward children's sports specials. Despite its disappearance from TV, the film retained a fan base among those who appreciated its clever writing and eclectic soundtrack. Today, it stands as a snapshot of an era when animated films could playfully mix adult humor with family appeal, before television became more cautious. 14. The Black Cauldron, 1985. Disney's The Black Cauldron was one of the studio's boldest and riskiest ventures of the 1980s. Based on Lloyd Alexander's The Chronicles of Prydain series, it told a dark, high-fantasy tale involving necromancy, an undead army, and a magical cauldron with the power to raise the dead. When released theatrically, the film was already heavily cut due to concerns over frightening imagery. Even so, when it eventually aired on television, it still proved too intense for some audiences. The Horned King, with his skeletal face and booming voice, terrified young viewers. Scenes of his undead warriors rising from the cauldron, even in edited form, drew parental complaints. While some networks kept it in rotation for a short while, others dropped it quickly, preferring to stick with Disney's lighter fare. For years, The Black Cauldron was the forgotten Disney film, absent from TV broadcasts, merchandise, and even home video releases. Ironically, its rarity only enhanced its mystique, making it a sought-after title for animation fans. 15. Brave Star, The Legend, 1988. A feature-length spin-off of the Brave Star animated series. Brave Star, The Legend mixed sci-fi and Western elements in a story about law, order, and justice on the distant planet of New Texas. The movie tackled serious themes like greed, corruption, and personal responsibility, wrapped in space-age gunfights and action sequences. When the film aired on TV shortly after its theatrical release, some parents' groups took issue with its depictions of firearms and violence, despite its moral-driven storyline. The film also included intense sequences involving the villain Tex Hex that pushed the tone closer to a dark space opera than a Saturday morning cartoon. Broadcasters, already under pressure from advocacy groups concerned about violence in children's programming, quickly pulled Brave Star. The Legend from most schedules. It became one of those films kids remembered catching once but could never find again. Today, it's recognized for its ambitious blend of genres and its surprisingly thoughtful moral lessons, a reminder that sometimes TV removals had more to do with public perception than actual content. These animated films of the 1980s proved that television wasn't always ready for bold, unconventional storytelling. Pulled from the airwaves but never from memory, they remain cult treasures. Which one shocked you most? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more untold movie history.